In this video, I'm going to dive into how does group coaching work as a business model. Get ready. If you're ready for more freedom, more prosperity, and more results for your clients, then creating a group coaching program or model may be the answer. That's what we're going to dive into and explore here. I'm going to talk about one-on-one coaching versus group coaching, the difference in the dynamic. I'm going to talk about the secret to being a great group coach. I'm going to share a little bit about my story and how I discovered some of these lessons myself the hard way. And then I'm going to dive into what does it take to create an uplifting group culture so that you're not having to manage everything all the time. So first, let's talk about one-on-one coaching versus group coaching. There's a belief in the world, and I know because I had it too, that one-on-one coaching is more valuable than group coaching. Why? Because it takes up more of your time. And there's also kind of an undercurrent, a belief subconsciously that more time equals more value. Now, I'm going to invite you to consider letting go of those beliefs, because the fact is, what makes group coaching work so well is the fact that you are tapping into the magic of a collective. And there's more magic, in my opinion, in the collective than there ever could be just from you alone. So for that reason, I invite you to consider switching your paradigm, and instead of thinking that one-on-one is more valuable than group, think of it actually as less valuable. That in a group dynamic, well run, which we're going to talk about, you can actually have bigger and better outcomes, and people can pop up and improve a lot quicker because they're in a culture, in a collective that's supporting that growth, instead of you being the source of all that growth all by yourself. Now, the secret to great group coaching is, drum roll please, the group itself. It all boils down to who are the individuals that you're bringing together into your group. Now, it doesn't work to have just any old buddy in the group. And that's the mistake that I made early on when I first started doing my group coaching program. I thought that anybody who wanted to work with me and anybody who could afford to work with me should work with me. And that comes from kind of an old ideology, like that whole always be closing, your job is to sell the person who's interested no matter what, overcome objections and get them to say yes. That is kind of an old school sales model. In this model, in the group coaching dynamic, you got to let that all go. You've got to think about, instead of selling people, think about it as curating people. You are handpicking people and bringing them into this sacred container, into this sacred space, because each person that you bring in is going to bring a little bit of the magic that's going to get created. And so the secret to having an amazing group coaching group program is having an amazing group of individuals. And once you have that group, it's not all done yet. That's not it. That doesn't end there. I mean, it's great to have an amazing people and put them together, but the amazing people also need an amazing container. So when I say container, I'm talking not of a physical container like an amazing room or space, although it could include that, but an amazing container means an amazing structure. And that structure involves things like your rules of engagement, the language that you use, the guidelines of interaction. It includes the experiences that you create for them, the format with which you engage with your clients as the leader of the culture. So it's not enough to just have great people. It's also important to decide and be intentional about how are those people going to engage with each other and engage with you. So before I move on into how to do this, I want to share my own story. So I mentioned earlier that I went from having a one-on-one program to creating a group program, but I didn't know any of this stuff when I started my group program. I was completely clueless. And so I ended up bringing in people who weren't the right fit. I mentioned that before, and who really didn't jive with each other. I didn't have a strong set of criteria for bringing people into the group. The only criteria was, can they pay me? Do they want to do it? And what happened was, the result of that, sadly, was that it was frustrating for me. It was frustrating for the people, and I would lose clients. I would bring people in. I had that part pretty well down, that I could enroll, but the people I was bringing in, because they weren't a right fit, they weren't really engaging effectively with each other, and I hadn't set a really strong container with strong values and strong rules. So what happened? People left. I didn't retain clients. It wasn't until I really stepped up into leadership and became intentional about, all right, these are the criteria, these are the rules of engagement, these are the standards for this culture, that I started to see the magic like magnify. And it happened fast. It doesn't have to take a long time. It was just enough time for the wrong people to leave and for me to be really intentional about bringing the right people in, and things started to up level really quickly. And now we can bring in a new client into that container, into the group, and drop them in, and whoop, they pop up really fast. Why? Because the collective has got them, and people tend to rise to the level of their peers, especially empowered people, responsible people. The right people that I curate tend to, boom, pop up really quick. So that's the lesson for you, is to really cultivate those people, curate them, and then decide on the container. Be a really good steward of the container that you're creating. If this conversation is intriguing to you and you are looking to move from a one-on-one model to a group model, then have I got a gift for you. I have a whole playlist on how to create a successful, prosperous, enjoyable group coaching business. So lastly, all this talk about bringing in the right people and creating that container begs the question, well, how do you do that, Michelle? Like, how do you set up an amazing container? How do you create a culture? Well, I've come up with a few key items, a few key pillars, if you will, for creating a culture. The first is to have a strong leader. That's you. A strong leader, an empowering leader, a compassionate leader, a congruent and aligned leader. Somebody that is who they say they are, who does what they say they're going to do, right? Somebody that people can trust and lean on. Somebody that's going to hold that container sacred and go ahead and have the difficult conversations that definitely will need to be had in order to hold the sacredness of that container. So that's you developing your leadership. The second thing that this needs is for you to have clear values and standards. One of the most important jobs you'll ever have is holding the values and standards of the group, of the collective, and recognizing when a new standard needs to be put into place. A standard is essentially the lowest common denominator. It's the lowest you'll go. It's the floor of what you'll accept or tolerate in your container, in your group. So for example, a standard might be, hey, we always treat each other with respect, and when there's disrespect, you address it and you talk about it. Or another standard might be, hey, everyone in this group has at least 3 years of experience in this area. So standards can look like a lot of different things, but essentially what they are is they raise the floor so that everything is above that level. A third thing that a great culture, group culture has is shared language. There are certain phrases or words that you might not even realize you use, or that you and your people use together. Well, codifying those, defining those terms, and making that part of when people come into the collective, that they get trained on them. Like, here's a list of the words we use, or here's a list of the phrases you'll hear. Here's how we do this thing, right? So codifying your language and also your processes and systems. And then the last thing that a great culture has is shared experiences. So that's where, for example, if you're doing an online coaching program, it might be a good idea to figure out how to gather people together and have maybe even in-person live experiences. But I'm a big believer that those live experiences bond people together and create the circumstances for retention, so that you're cultivating relationships over time and people aren't just coming and going. Because you really can't build a culture if people are popping in and popping out. So actually another piece of that is commitment, is making sure that the people that are joining the culture are committed. We have a standard that creates commitment, which is that everyone who joins our culture joins for at least a year. And when they complete that first year, the next level of commitment is 2 years. And by having those levels of time commitment, people are much more engaged and they contribute a lot more to the group. If you're looking to create a group coaching program, one that is joyful, that's energy rich, that's profitable and lucrative, then let's connect. Go to superstaractivator.com/go and find out how you can set up a call with me to explore and discover if and how I might be able to support you in building your group coaching business. See you soon.